was just asking Eric about. I want to touch on marijuana from an economic standpoint because you are in Colorado, Dave, with recreational marijuana, and there's been a lot of articles flying around about various things in relation to these laws changing. So I wanted to look at it from, like I said, from a purely economical standpoint. And I don't know, it may be too soon to get into that as far as having any real data. You guys want to get started, or should we?
I think Colorado. I think the number I saw for last year, or it must be year to date. I think even with medical, I think last year with just medical before it went full recreational, and recreational has a 25% tax surcharge in it. But I think Colorado had something like 200 million in tax revenues last year from it.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's massive. My parents are in their 80s and they voted for the amendment that legalized weed.
Well, that's good.
Is that 200 some odd million strictly out of the medical marijuana?
I think that was out of medical. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember if it was a year-to-date number for medical and recreational. I think it's the way the government operates. I'm sure it was a lagged number from 2013. So I think it was from medical. So it'll be even higher from recreational. But I don't know why people are afraid of weed. I mean, I'm more worried about drunk drivers than I am stoned drivers.
You got that right.
Eric, do you guys have medical in Oregon?
Yeah, it's been here for many, many years.
Have you looked at, Eric, have you looked at any of the numbers from the tax revenues, tax generations in Oregon? And you were saying something about it coming on, there's some vote coming up.
Yeah, for this November election, the Oregon voters are going to decide whether or not to make recreational marijuana legal. It'll permit up to 8 ounces of possession, and it will be regulated and taxed. And I don't know how lucrative of a revenue center the medical marijuana industry here has been. I'm not fresh with those numbers, but it's I don't know. I mean, it's not going to be a huge boon to the Oregon economy directly, but indirectly because of sales to other states that are still illegal. There's a lot of money that flows into Oregon and Washington and Colorado and so forth. And frankly, that monies are larger than the official trade, in part because it's just more marijuana is flowing out of the state than what's being smoked in, I suspect.
Yeah, I would imagine that Colorado and Washington both have a lot of marijuana tourists.
Colorado definitely does. It's been a big boom for the Denver economy. I mean, it's helped real estate, especially commercial, because it's these marijuana shops open up in areas where there was cheap vacant commercial real estate.
Makes sense.
It's taken some of the commercial supply. I mean, every city has a huge oversupply of commercial, but it's taken some of the commercial supply off the market. It's increased the velocity of money in the Denver economy, and there's plenty of people who have moved here to get into the business. And there's a guy that lives in my building that moved out here from New Jersey specifically to get into the business.
Okay, but there's so much that's going on in our world. It's hard to. There's just so much. But anyway, when I interviewed Alistair McLeod a couple of weeks ago, he started discussing the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and one of the things that really stuck out with me during that interview was the fact that the SCO, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is going to encompass approximately 50% of the global population. And that is, is that positive? Is it negative? I don't know. But you had made a comment when you posted, and thank you very much, Dave, for posting my work over, and you, Eric, for posting at the News Doctors and at Investment Research Dynamics. I really appreciate that, guys. But Dave, you had made a comment about the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and if you would just share with the audience what you know about this organization.
Well, interestingly, it gets no media coverage in this country. I first heard about it. I don't know if you guys remember the newsletter that Bill Buckler, an Australian, used to put out called The Privateer.
Oh yeah.
And he retired and stopped publishing it. It was an invaluable source of geopolitical and economic information. And I first read about the SCO, I want to say 2010. And he made the comment that no one in the West was paying attention to it, but that it was going to grow into a significant and influential economic geopolitical organization. So whenever I read anything of it, whenever I see reference to it, I like to try and follow up and see what's been going on. So the SCO is comprised of China, Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, which in and of itself doesn't sound that impressive other than China and Russia. However, they also had what they called observing members, and that was India, Iran, Mongolia, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. And as of next month, I believe it is, India, Iran, Mongolia, and Pakistan are going to be inducted into the membership of the SCO. And then they have another cohort of quote unquote members that are called dialogue members. That's Belarus, Turkey, and Sri Lanka. And I think it's actually going to encompass 2/3 of the world's population when India and Iran and these other 4 countries are part of the circle. And it was originally, I think, sort of founded to foster trade relations in the Asian region, and it seems to be developing into the Eastern Hemisphere's counterpart to NATO, is for lack of a better analogy. And now they cooperate militarily, with intelligence, etc. So everything that Russia has been able to squeeze from Edward Snowden's head on the NSA, believe me, they've shared it with these countries, or they've shared a lot of it with these countries. So I think it's just part of the emerging status of the Eastern Hemisphere countries kind of developing into the new economic and military powerhouse of the globe.
And there was an article that posted over at the BRICS Post last week talking about 5 of the SCO member nations conducting military drills in China, and they were going to be going. I think they're still going on.
Yeah, it's going on. I mean, one way to look at this in the big picture is to borrow from none other than Zbigniew Brzezinski, the former national security advisor to Jimmy Carter, and just purportedly one of the mentors to Barack Obama. He's like a Kissinger type of person who's been involved with the oligarchy and serving their interests and translating that through foreign policy. And back in 1998, he wrote a book called The Grand Chessboard, where he outlined strategically the importance of this very area that is now being encompassed by this organization. And, we're talking well north of 3/4 of the world's mineral wealth, including oil, is encompassed in this when you extended the outward perimeters to incorporate the Middle East. And it basically is a region of the world that can be self-contained in terms of trade relations, and that's in part why it's getting a lot more emphasis amongst the participating economies now, given what's going on with the thrashing of the Anglo-American empire that is attempting to preserve the reserve status of the dollar. And this is a financial war going on underneath the surface. It's a hot war in finance, and the large agreements that China is executing with Russia and all other nations that they're in negotiations with on an ongoing basis now has the world in excess of more than 25% of transactions worldwide being settled outside of the dollar zone. It's more than double what it was start of this millennium, and that trend's speeding up as the empire weakens and the dollar reserve status weakens. So this is going to be one of the pivotal architectural structures that China and Russia and BRICS and other nations in Asia overall are going to find the path of least resistance to join. Even nations like Japan, who has been a stalwart ally of the United States, will find it very difficult to act outside of this large economic bloc. It's China and Russia's answer to the Western imperial forces that they've been fighting against.
Is this going to be? Will it incorporate the BRICS and the BRICS Development Bank and everything that those guys are working on, or is this?
Yeah, eventually it will.
Okay.
It's just a question of how fast that kind of incorporation happens.
Okay. So it's just going to be just rolled into it, and then there, and with the alternative to the SWIFT system, they will be completely self-contained, and they won't need anything from the Western world at all. They'll already have all the gold, so.
They won't have your gold, Rory.
No, we can still hear you when you walk down the street.
I see how you are.
I got a quick question for Eric. Eric, how far do you live from the coast?
Well, as the crow flies, as they say, probably about maybe 60 miles, but highway driving 100 or so.
I mean, has there been any media reports or media coverage of Fukushima water that apparently has been hitting the West Coast?
Yeah, there has been. There also have been independent studies. Alex Jones did a review of the reports that are coming out of the San Mateo area. I forget the organization, but there was one organization in Oregon that did some testing of waters off of our coast as well, too. And though the radiation is detectable and elevated versus the standards that are the prevailing standards now, that were actually increased higher to deal with the higher levels of radiation, which is another story altogether, part of the cover-up going on. If there hasn't, by my review of the research that's been done, there hasn't been anything that's seriously off the charts yet. But the real problem is that you have migrating species like tuna and salmon and the food web overall transmitting what is clearly off the charts radiation levels localized 200 or 300 or 400 miles away from the epicenter in Fukushima, entering into the food chain. And that's where the spread is going to happen. So, there has been testing of fish products, and again, it's been more, it's noticeable, it's registering, but the powers that be are basically saying that the level of radiation is within the limits of reasonable exposure, and then they always, draw analogies to, how many hours in an airplane it's equivalent to, et cetera, et cetera. But the problem is that if you have one hot particle lodged into your intestines, that could conceivably give you cancer.
Well,
so,
I don't know if you guys saw this or not. I think it was last week or earlier this week. They're getting ready to dump all of that wastewater into the ocean. Every drop.
Well, it's actually, they've had an ongoing problem with leak water, and then also, they have all these stupid storage tanks above the complex, and those things aren't doing the job that they're supposed to do, and they no longer have any more space. So the TEPCO was pretty much out in the open 2 months ago, saying that they were just going to dump into the Pacific.
Yep.
And they're doing it.
Well, and they had those reserve wells that were off-site, or not off-site, but they weren't part of the plant itself. They were.
Yeah, it's kind of like up the hill from the plant.
Exactly, and those were leaking, and that's the water that they're getting ready to dump. That's what they're getting ready to unleash, and that's going to be massive.
Well, I don't think they're going to dump all of those tanks that are still integral and not leaking. But the problem is that they're constantly flushing water from the Pacific into, I think it was reactor complex 3, and maybe 2 as well, to keep it cool.
Right.
And you're talking about a huge volume of water every day, and they have nowhere to put it. So what they do is they dump it into that holding lagoon. I don't know what they call it, but it's right in front. It's almost like this enclosed area where they just recycle their water. But the thing is leaking, and it's dumping tons of water into the Pacific right now. So anything that they put in to cool the complex is dumping into the Pacific. And then they were also talking about building this kind of ice wall surrounding the plant where they freeze the water so that the fresh water coming out of the plant after they flush it to keep the rods cool would hit this ice wall. But that's about as harebrained as you can imagine. Can you imagine TEPCO trying for 100+ years to maintain this 6-foot thick wall of ice and whatnot, and hot water coming out of a reactor hitting that wall? I mean, it's silly. It doesn't seem like they've had any kind of a higher level strategic plan to deal with this kind of thing. It's all incremental band-aids.
Whew, it's a scary situation if you ask me, because we're not going to get truthful reporting out of the U.S. or Japan on this thing.
Yeah. Even the law that Japan passed immediately after all of the TEPCO cover-ups were going on is indicative of just where Japan is coming from. They basically, you can go to jail in Japan if you report on Fukushima.
Now, I know that there's one news organization, and they were reporting on it pretty heavily, and their reporting has dropped off quite dramatically, and that was ENE News, and they were reporting they were getting some really solid information out for a while, and right around the time that Sean interviewed a lady out of Australia, Dr. Helen Caldecott.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have listened to that interview, but it's really, you need to go back and listen to it. Right
I
around.
I actually did a job interview with her once, believe it or not.
Did you?
Back in, when was it? I think 2002. I interviewed to be her press agent.
Wow. But right around the time that he did that he conducted that interview is when they were dumping like 600 tons of water a day, every day. And that's what ENE News reported that it was, and it had been going on, ever since the explosion, and they first started dumping water onto it. That all of that water that they were dumping was coming out of the ocean onto the reactors and back into the ocean.
Right.
And it's just incredible. And for people to say that. And I think that I understand why you ask him that, Dave. I mean, do you think that that's going to affect your water tables up there, Eric?
Well, not so much where I am, because our water is fed by local mountain snowpack.
Okay.
So, if we have atmospheric radiation, and some of that has gone on, particularly in 2011, in the 6 months or so,
right,
immediately following the incident, there was a huge plume that came over the Pacific and did, in fact, impact the western states in particular, but also even just following the pattern of the jet stream. It dumped quite a bit in the corn growing areas of the heartland and so forth. But I mean, there's nowhere to hide, really. I mean, people say, "Oh, you got to go to the southern hemisphere because atmospherically, the northern hemisphere will be an enclosed system," and even that's a fantasy. So, dilution is one's friend, and that's really the only saving grace, that and one's own individual health and the level of your own body's ability to take care of cells that have gone cancerous. That's the best protection anyone could do, is to just live a healthy lifestyle, make sure that they're as best as they can be healthy to fend off these kind of risks.
So probably sitting around smoking weed and eating Sonics is probably not a great idea.
Certainly the Sonics. I mean, some people, ascribe medicinal ability of, marijuana oils in particular to fend off cancerous cells. And there is some evidence of that, but that's a show for another day.
Maybe we'll cover that in the next show.
Yeah.
I'll send y'all coupons for some Krispy Kremes, and we'll sit around and have Krispy Kremes and chat about marijuana oil.
Fire up the Amazon drone delivery.
You know, I can't eat glazed donuts because once I start, I can't stop. That's
and
one of my weaknesses.
The problem with that is what? What's the problem with that?
I would eat like 12 of them and probably contract diabetes immediately. That and English toffee. I can't. If I don't touch it, I won't eat it. But once I just taste it, that's it.
Yeah, well, we know what we're going to send you for Christmas.
No.
All of a sudden, you'll see the marked change in Dave's writings in his blog. It'll be like, bouncing around all over the place. Sugar high is evident,
Oh, my goodness. You guys are killing me. Well, let's, like I said before, I could talk to you guys all day, but I know we're all busy, so we should probably end this. And I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all your time, guys, and really what you guys are doing is just really spectacular work. And
well, thank you.
You too, Rory.
It just means a lot to me to be able to talk to you guys and pick your brains. So, but you guys go get to it, and I will talk with you guys soon.
All right, that sounds good. You guys have a great long weekend.
You too.
Yeah.
Stay out of the ocean up there, Eric.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.